We're going to take a look at bacteriophages and different types of viral infections in eukaryotic cells, and also how some viruses can cause cancer. So remember there's two different types of bacteriophages. We have the virulent bacteriophages, and remember virulent means severe. So they're going to do the lytic cycle. And remember that they're going to infect the bacterial cell and make new virus right away, and then lyse the bacterial cell and kill it. So that's not very nice. So these virulent phages, they just do the lytic cycle. And then the other type of bacteriophage, these are the temperate phages. Temperate means moderate. So they're a little bit nicer to the bacterial cells at first. So they can do the lysogenic cycle and then also the lytic cycle. So in the lysogenic cycle, remember that they insert their viral DNA into the bacterial chromosome as the prophage, and then they just stay in the bacterial chromosome for long periods of time until they sense that the environment's not good and the bacterial cell's in trouble, it's going to die. And then the prophage will cut itself out of the bacterial chromosome and then start the lytic cycle and make new virus and lyse the bacterial cell and then go find a new host cell to infect. And then just make sure you know the vocabulary words here. So remember in the lysogenic cycle, the prophage, that's just the viral DNA that's inserted into the bacterial chromosome. And then the lysogen, that's just the bacterial cell that has the viral DNA that's inserted into it. Let's take a look at the virulent bacteriophages first. And remember that they're just doing the lytic cycle. So our virulent bacteriophage will bind to its specific receptor on our bacterial cell, and it's going to inject its DNA inside the bacterial cell, and it's going to go ahead and make new virus right away in the lytic cycle. And once the new virus is made, then it will lyse the bacterial cell and kill the cell, and then these newly made virulent bacteriophages will then go find a new bacterial cell to then go ahead and do another lytic cycle and make new virulent bacteriophages again. But if we have a temperate bacteriophage, they're going to be doing the lysogenic cycle. So they will bind to a specific receptor on the bacterial cell, inject their viral DNA, but instead of doing the lytic cycle, they're going to be going ahead and doing the lysogenic cycle. So instead of making new virus, they're going to be inserting their viral DNA into the bacterial chromosome. And that viral DNA is going to be called the prophage. So that would be a good thing to remember. So in our lysogenic cycle with the temperate bacteriophage, the viral DNA that's inserted into the bacterial chromosome is called the prophage. And now the bacterial cell that has the prophage inserted into the bacterial chromosome is called the lysogen. And when the bacterial cell divides and copies its chromosome, it's just going to copy that viral DNA as well. And so all of the daughter cells will also have a copy of that prophage in their bacterial chromosome as well. And so this will just keep being passed on to all the daughter cells as long as the environment stays good and everything is fine. But if the environment turns bad and the virus senses that, oh, my host cell is not doing very well and is probably going to die, the prophage senses that and it will cut itself out of the bacterial chromosome, and then it will go out of the lysogenic cycle and go into the lytic cycle. And it will start producing new viruses, lyse the bacterial cell, killing it, and then it will go find a new bacterial cell to infect, and then hopefully that new cell will be in a better environment and it will survive, and then it will start the lysogenic cycle all over again. So that's the difference between the virulent bacteriophages, which do the lytic cycle, and then the temperate bacteriophages, which will do the lysogenic cycle first, and then if it looks like their host cell is going to die because of bad environmental conditions, then they'll do the lytic cycle and go find a new host cell. All right, so with those temperate bacteriophages that are doing this lysogenic cycle and inserting their viral DNA into the bacterial chromosome, we do have one important result that I do want you to know about this lysogenic cycle. And we're not going to talk about the second one. You don't need to know that one. But the first one is called phage conversion. And this is a really interesting result of these temperate bacteriophages. So what this is that with certain bacteria, for example, the bacteria that cause diphtheria, so here we've got our Corynebacterium diphtheriae. So this bacteria by itself will not cause diphtheria. So in order for it to cause diphtheria, it actually has to be infected with a temperate bacteriophage. And so when it gets infected with that temperate bacteriophage and has the prophage inserted into the bacterial chromosome, that prophage, that phage DNA has a toxin gene. And the toxin gene from the virus is what is going to make you sick with diphtheria. So the bacteria by itself will not make you sick with diphtheria. The only way that Corynebacterium diphtheria can make you sick is if the bacterium has been infected with a temperate bacteriophage, and this phage actually contains a toxin gene which causes diphtheria. So that's really interesting. So it's actually the phage that's making you sick with diphtheria. So that is phage conversion. So these bacteria get converted by the bacteriophage and now are able to make you sick. So that's phage conversion. Okay, this one you don't need to know, specialized transduction. I'm not going to ask you that on the test. So you can skip that. We're going to switch over and take a look at the types of viral infections that can happen in eukaryotic cells. So there's 4 different possibilities. We've got acute or cytocidal infections. And this would be, for example, like maybe you get a cold or the flu, and your immune system will eventually fairly quickly get rid of the virus. And then we have the latent infections. So that word latent is very important to remember. Latent means hidden. So you never get rid of the viral infection. You are infected with it the rest of your life. So what happens is the virus will hide out in a certain cell type in your body. It goes dormant. It doesn't produce any virus. You can't detect it. But then it can come out, maybe when you're stressed or immunosuppressed for some reason, and then cause another infection. Examples of eukaryotic viruses that cause latent infections would be any of the herpes viruses. So, for example, chickenpox. You get that maybe as a kid, and then it hides out in some of the sensory neurons, and then it can come back later when you're older and cause shingles and reinfect those skin cells. Another type of viral infection we can see in eukaryotic cells would be these persistent or chronic infections. So this is where the immune system, again, does not get rid of the viral infection, but instead of the virus hiding out and going dormant in the cells, it continually makes the virus, and it's just kind of a slow, continuous release of the virus for years or usually the rest of your life. A good example of a persistent or chronic infection would be hepatitis C. And then the last one would be a transforming viral infection. And they call it this because the virus will transform your normal cells into malignant or cancerous cells. So the virus is able to cause cancer. There's not too many viruses that are able to do this, so don't get too freaked out by that. All right, so this is just a nice picture that just shows the 4 different types of viral infections in eukaryotic cells. And we've got the acute or cytocidal infection here, where the virus infects the cell, you start producing the virus, but then the immune system will fairly quickly get rid of the virus, and then the virus is gone. And then the latent infection, some of the virus will hide out in some of your body cells, go dormant. You can't detect any virus, no virus is being made. It just hides out there. And then at stress, maybe your immune system's down for whatever reason, the virus can come back out and cause another infection. So any of the herpes viruses will cause these latent infections. And then these chronic or persistent infections, the immune system is not able to get rid of the virus, but you will continually produce low levels of the virus. So like hepatitis C will cause these chronic or persistent infections. And then the last type of viral infection would be the transforming infection, where the virus will cause your normal cells to turn into malignant or cancerous cells. Okay, and this is just a really nice picture that just shows the number of viruses here on the y-axis, and then here's our time on the x-axis on the bottom. And in red is just showing an acute viral infection. So if you have an acute viral infection, you get infected with the virus, you start producing lots of virus, but then your immune system will get rid of the virus, and then the virus disappears, and you get better, like with a cold, and the virus is gone from your body. Okay, and then you're done with the virus. But if you get infected with maybe chickenpox, one of our herpes virus, the varicella zoster virus, you do start off with the acute infection, so you get the chickenpox. But then your immune system will get rid of the chickenpox, but some of the varicella zoster virus will hide out in some of those sensory neurons. The virus just goes dormant. You don't detect any of the virus at all. And then here in green, maybe later on in life, you're stressed or your immune system goes down for whatever reason, and the herpes virus will come back out and reinfect the skin cells and cause shingles. So that's a latent or hidden infection. And then if you get infected with hepatitis C, for example, you would start out with an acute infection. The immune system would start to get rid of the hepatitis C virus, but it doesn't clear the virus completely from the body. So we will have some of the virus that will remain in the liver cells, and they will continually produce low levels of the hepatitis C virus, so you get this chronic or persistent infection. And then what happens at the end is that you're pretty sick, and then the immune system is going down, and the virus levels really go up there as you're not doing well at the end. Okay, so just understanding what this graph is just saying and what those types of eukaryotic viral infections, what those words mean, is really important. Okay, and then this is just a table just giving you some examples of some latent viral infections, and then here's some ones that are persistent or chronic viral infections. So you can just look at some of those.